had that dream again. My small business needs to hire, but I don't use LinkedIn, and I hire an energy vampire. But also, they're a literal vampire. And suddenly my team is spending all their time sharpening wooden stakes and buying bulk silver and rehearsing ancient chants, and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant takes insights from over 1 billion professionals to create a short list of the best fits for you. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/quality. Start hiring today with LinkedIn.
Two, one. Welcome to another Britflix.com podcast. My name's Stuart Wright, and today's guest is writer James Rose. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me back.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Yes, indeed. You are a returning guest. We talked last time about your book regarding Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a wonderful conversation that went hither and thither, and I really enjoyed it. And as you found out, it is also one of my favourite movies too. So any excuse to wax lyrical about that film is an excuse well done. But today, we're going to focus a little bit on your interview and text that you contributed to Umbrella Entertainment's release of Hardware, as well as then just open up the conversation for you to talk about the sort of space in the writing market and home entertainment market of this kind of stuff in terms of films of the ilk of Hardware and beyond, and maybe we'll dip into things like, streaming versus physical media, that kind of thing, hopefully. And you promised me it will dovetail into your three choices. Well, I know it will for one, because it's one of your choices. And we will be doing three films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Does that sound like what you've signed up for?
Absolutely brilliant, yes. Yes, indeed.
Cool. So let us start then with the Umbrella Entertainment's release of Hardware. So when you're circling a project like that or finding out about a project like that for you to do an interview and contribute text, where in the process of that release do you come on board?
In my experience, it's quite varied. I'm either contacted by the producer of the product itself, the DVD, the Blu-ray, and they say, we're doing this release, would you be interested? Or I contact them, usually on the fly, on spec, and just say, I'm available. These are the things that I've done. Is there anything similar that you would be interested in me working on? So it's a sort of a two-way exchange. I've never experienced these things advertised or spoken about broadly. I think it's more of it's a world in which producers know like a body of people that can contribute, and they quite rightly choose the people that they feel are best suited for that production, because they want someone that can speak with authority, either doing a commentary of the film or speak with authority through a text that's inside the rather increasingly beautifully produced booklets. But for Hardware, it's a little bit different. The text that sort of analyses Richard Stanley, the director, and his other films as well as Hardware, was written many, many years ago for Senses of Cinema, an Australian online film journal, quite a respected one.
Okay.
And the interview was also written many, many years ago, or undertaken many years ago, for the Irish Journal of Gothic and Horror Studies. So Umbrella contacted me and said, if these are available to sort of, should we say, license, can we do that? Because we'd like them to be in this part of this release. So it was quite a surprise, because I just literally woke up one morning in possibly November, December-ish. I've just got this email saying, are you the James Rose that's written these things?
Okay. So this is you having written sort of canon interviews, as it were, about the in this case Richard Stanley, and them going, we want to recycle this as part of and give it to a broader audience than maybe, or a new audience that maybe wouldn't have seen it or can't get hold of that anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's the pleasure of that way of doing this bit of writing in inverted commas, is that the work has already got a life and an audience. But when you put it in the context of a boutique label and boutique release, it's going to a completely different audience. And as a writer, that's fantastic, because your writing's reaching different audiences and your thinking's reaching different audiences. So it was just like, if I can secure the licensing for you, I'd love it to be in there. I think there's something about both the text and the interview are about his broader sort of practices. So in a way, that both have got a lot about hardware in them.
Yeah.
But they are balanced out by his other work, like when he was growing up in South Africa and his relationship with his mum. And then there's things about sort of problems of the island of Dr. Moreau, his second film, Dust Devil. So they're not focused specifically upon hardware, but they're sort of saying hardware's part of this bigger picture or part of this bigger puzzle that's Richard Stanley.
Yeah.
And I think taking them from their original context and putting them together, seeing it in the final stuff and skim reading it again, it's sort of like, yeah, whoever's made that decision to put them together, it's quite astute, because they feed each other backwards and forwards, and you can take the knowledge that Stanley communicates himself in the interview, or I interpret from the film, and put it into your own viewing of the film. So yeah, a rich experience.
So let me get that right then. So there's two articles, and then they have you. When were the articles originally written?
Oh, ages ago. I didn't write down the dates, to be honest, when I was gathering my notes.
90s or noughties?
Noughties, definitely.
Okay, so noughties. So at least could be 20 years, could be
potentially.
Yeah, which is frightening, having said that out loud now. I thought the 21st century only started last week. So they what are they, for the package that went together with the 4K disc? Then they melded them together into one piece of writing. Is that what you did?
They're separate.
Okay.
I remember correctly, they're next to one another. So it's like the analysis of Stanley as sort of like a myth maker. I think that's what that sort of text tries to establish, that he deals with myths and mythologies and sort of contemporary things and bolts them together. And then there's the interview, which sort of bounces backwards and forwards between those two sort of ideas. Yeah. So yeah.
How was he to interview? What do you remember?
Now that's another great story. The interview came out of when before the interview took place, there was Subversive released a very early boutique version of Dust Devil.
Okay.
And it was an absolutely magnificent limited edition release for its time.
Yeah.
It had Dust Devil in various cuts. And it also had all of Stanley's documentary work, his unseen short films. And that's the absolute beauty of these boutique releases, is that they really go to great lengths to unearth stuff that people like me and people like you and people like your listeners really want to engage with and really want to see, to fill in the gaps of their sort of the people that they enjoy. So there was this Subversive release, but also Optimum in the UK released the director's cut of Dust Devil. And they came out not at the same time, but at a similar time.
Yeah.
And I sort of thought, this would be a great opportunity to interview him. I won't say why, because I'll talk about that when we talk about hardware.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was just like I contacted some of my editors and just said, I'd love to interview him. Could we wrangle it? And one said, yeah, let's do it. And we'll try and wrangle it. And at the time, Stanley was living in, probably still is, to be honest, in quite a remote part of the world. And should we say Wi-Fi was variable. So it was decided that a phone call or a video call would be fruitless. So I thought, okay, why don't I'll email him, because I know you'll be able to access his email at some point.
Yeah.
I'll email him the questions, and we can sort of have a dialogue that way. And I was a bit like, oh, it's a shame, because I would like to talk to him. But it meant that I could ask the questions I wanted to ask. And so I did it that way. And the answers that came back were not bonkers, but really thoughtful and really considered. And it made me just sort of, from a professional sort of journalist point of view, when you're interviewing someone, you're getting a response there and then. And it can be quite fresh, it can be quite raw, and it can be quite unrefined. But because Stanley had the chance to read the questions and mull them over, I got some absolute, frankly, gold in return. And there was these insights that, particularly into hardware, that were just like, I don't think I would have got that had I sat there with him in a room, or sat there with him on the phone, or sat there in a video call, and sort of, struggled to tease them out. So this whole sort of scenario, from my point of view as a professional sort of writer, is quite eye-opening, because there's new life in an old piece of work. There's a new audience in an old piece of work. And there's a medium of communicating with the director that allows for new things to come out and for more insightful things to come out, instead of the rawness of an interview. And it's made me think now, in the sort of present, do I really want to interview that person face to face, or would I rather email them and get some more nuanced responses? Perhaps that's the best way of describing it. So yeah, really interesting process for a writer.
I've only ever done a handful. I've been a print journalist before. I never liked email interviews, if I'm honest with you. I can understand because I was going to ask, because obviously I've seen Richard talk, and to say he's larger than life is an understatement. And to say things come out of his mouth that might not necessarily be as coherent as you might want them to be in a normal sense. I'm sure the irony's Ed. But when he's talking around, I mean, obviously a man who likes his magic and whatnot, that can all sound a bit. I mean, as Alan Moore has experienced, when you try and talk about that kind of thing, there's the theory of it and there's the belief in it, and they're the two very different things. And once you believe it, it can all sound like you're just talking about beans on toast. But to the listener, it ain't beans on toast, because you're talking about magic like it's real, and that's not necessarily an easy thing. So I suppose, in an email, being able to sort of counter the logic and the doubt and the cynicism without looking somebody in the eye and just go, this is how I feel, this is what I think.
It led to some really sort of precise thinking about because I mentioned the Dust Devil character, and I sort of suggested things about how does it connect sort of synergetically to things like the Man with No Name. And the response comes back with this almost like this catalogue of history of this nomadic symbolic wanderer. Yeah. And what really kind of struck me was he sort of connected it even with something like Nick Cave's The Red Right Hand.
Oh, right.
And it's just like, wow. And that's just like the way in which he'd thought about it made me rethink that character. And you just sort of like thinking there's an energy in the writing. And like you said, I think the sort of like the surface of his sort of esoteria had been dampened, but it still came out, particularly when I asked about why the cyborg, well, it's not a cyborg, it's a droid. The droid in hardware it's programming Baal, B-A-A-L. And I said, what's that? And he sent this response back about how it's a pagan god and how this sort of esoteria is inscribed into its programming. But when you read it, it all makes complete sense. And then you realise the droid is about destroying the human population. It doesn't like reproduction. It doesn't like all of these things. And its bell coding sort of connects with that. And you sort of think, he's really, really thought about this.
Yeah, that's subtext beyond subtext, isn't it, in a way? Because it's not on the screen, is it?
You see it once. In a few seconds, it just comes up, bell coding. And then it goes.
Exactly.
And it's like, and it just makes you, your investment in the film and your recognition of the time and the effort and the intellect that's been poured into that film, it's suddenly elevated by that singular question in an interview.
Yeah.
Just kind of think that's how it works for me now in its second life in the hardware release, Umbrella's release, because it's sort of directing the viewer just to be alert to that moment and to sort of guide them in the way of thinking. And yeah, we can watch the film as pure 1990s sci-fi entertainment, but there's just too much in there to not try and get into, which hopefully later.
If this was an opportunity that came about to give a second life to work you'd already done, what work have you been able to do contributing to releases that has been completely new, created specifically for? What kind just give some examples of the kind of things you've been able to do.
I can only talk about one.
Yeah, go on.
I've got two more coming out, which I can't talk about because they've not been announced yet.
That's okay. Well, talk about what you can.
The one that I can talk about is Second Sight's Late Night with the Devil.
Okay.
Which was great because I think the enjoyment of doing them is that you're offered a film to write about and you've seen it as in this mode of entertainment. It's like, oh, great, Late Night with the Devil. Everyone's saying it's great. I'd love to see it. So you go and see it or you access it via streaming services. And then you're asked to write about it and you're kind of like, oh, well, okay. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
So you end up, you either get sent a screener or you've got the film already and you sit down and watch it and you're really looking at it in a completely different way. And it's an enriching experience for me as a writer. And I don't want to put anything out there that's forced or anything that feels like it's sort of like cheapening what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
I want to put something out there that somebody can say, he said this and I can see it. I can see how that works. I might not accept it and I'm 100% okay with that.
Yeah. But
I can see it. So Late Night with the Devil was really, really good because to me, it's got a lot of synergies with Ghostwatch, the BBC.
Indeed. Oh, yeah.
Production.
I mean, it's got a lot of synergies.
Yeah, it's got an awful lot of connections with it. And my kind of adoration for that production went into my adoration for Late Night with the Devil and sort of thinking about the whole idea of deception that runs throughout the film. And you end up sort of thinking, I understood that when I was watching it, but only now when I sit down and at my Mac and writing, that you suddenly start to think, yeah, that's what was ticking away in my mind. That's where I enjoyed it.
So are you being asked to do that, or are you pitching that this is what you want to do?
That one I was asked to do.
But you were asked to do specifically that, or did you say?
The film was just available at the time in which I was in sort of contact and dialogue with the producers.
Yeah.
They sort of said, oh, this has come up. We're doing a booklet for it.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in doing that? So there's always been an option to say no. And I think that's really, really important because I don't want to take on a film that I can't write about, or take on a film that I don't feel comfortable watching, or take on a film that I'm not entirely sure you want to be connected with. And that, to go back to hardware, it's just like a dream come true, really, because I just love it. I think it's a fantastic film. But then when you get presented with a film like Late Night with the Devil, you're just kind of thinking, yeah, there's a lot of longevity in it, and there's a lot of ideas in it. And if it's bringing perhaps ideas that have already been worked through once to a new audience and working through them again, it's just an interesting way of dealing with things. And the two that I can't talk about work in pretty much the same way. They're in both instances, I've been very aware of how just one scene in both of them really triggers a sort of like, it's terrible to say, but an intellectual way of thinking.
No. Well, that's what it is. I mean, it's like there's no point you writing a synopsis about what the film is about because you can read that on the back. That's on the back. It's everywhere. It's on IMDb. It's everywhere. But if you've got a point of view or a thesis about it, then if you can argue it, and like you say, it's not about everyone agreeing with you. It's just about, and I guess with something that's much newer, like Late Night with the Devil, is you know, from an ego point of view, you get a chance to draw one of the first lines in the sand to say, here's some, because obviously you can't help but absorb the other conversations that are going on around it anyway. So you're already absorbing different points of view.
That's a fantastic way of interpreting these boutique releases, really, of new stuff, because although you're getting critical engagement and critical dialogue in the moment of the film's release, it is often quite minimal, because really what the film's release needs is hype to the mainstream audience. It's only after the event that the intellectual sort of discussion begins.
Indeed.
And I'm beginning to see more and more these boutique releases, particularly by Second Sight and Umbrella and Arrow, are really starting to bring in a lot of new voices into that sort of realm and giving lots of different perspectives on one thing. And that's what I like so much about it, is these booklets are trying to see the film in 360 degrees. It's trying to see it from a production point of view, from a scripting point of view, from an intellectual point of view, from a sort of image point of view, from a impact point of view. And you get a sense of a much bigger understanding of the film. So being able to contribute to that, I think you're right, you are adding something new to what is essentially a new discussion, and that's fantastic.
And I would also add as well, in this age of clickbait and click rage and stuff like that, you're contributing to a physical booklet. So the pressure to get clicks from what you write, i.e., if you go on film websites now, there's a tendency to either say something is the best thing I've ever seen in my life, or something is embarrassingly bad, don't watch it. And there's no room for any opinion in between. And there certainly isn't a lot of room for popular websites that are popular to say anything interesting or, dare I say, intellectual about a movie. Whereas these books that come with 4K and Blu-ray releases are built just for that. There's a freedom that doesn't exist necessarily in the web world. And I guess, you know, in times gone, when magazines were maybe more of a dominant form, you had essays about films, and you could have retrospectives. Obviously, Sight and Sound still exists, I suppose. So there's still an opportunity in that sense. But there was a broader sort of genre market as well that would have gone, do you know what? I haven't thought about it. This is the best film ever. And it'd be 5 years after it's come out, and somebody will argue why, or there'll be the classic Sacred Cow kind of essay and that kind of thing. And I guess the Blu-ray 4K booklets now are having to fill that gap in a way, aren't they? In some senses, I don't think it fills it completely, but because obviously it's very curated, so you're limited in terms of it. But I suppose ultimately it's adding value to a genre that isn't considered value by the mainstream. But the people that do devour this stuff, they see the value immediately.
I think what appeals to me about the booklets is their very physicality. And in an age of, like you're saying, a digital world and streaming and things like that, there is a group of people out there worldwide that want a physical release, want it on their shelf, and they want a book that goes with it. And there's that idea of going through a book. I mean, some of the books that I've been involved in, they're just beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful things. Like the Late Night with the Devil one is this beautifully put together softbound book with its own specific art that's been done for it, and it just carries on the theme of the film. And you kind of feel like you're looking at a production diary for the series. It's the Night Owl series. It's fantastic. So I think there's that connection you've made is lovely, because it makes me think about things like magazines like Fear, Samain, Skeleton Crew, the very short-lived Skeleton Crew. Yeah. And that diverse mix of what you said of like 1980s, 1990s opinion, but also there's a couple of articles in there that I've still got some of them, and you look through them and they're like deeply intellectual things in this, what is essentially a fanzine. And that's what these booklets do. You're right, they do fill that gap. They've got an embracement of the making of and the pleasure of, but they're also saying we can look at it in a different way.
Yeah, indeed. Let's try and engage with it. Absolutely. No, I mean, if it hadn't been for, say, Head Press, I'd have no idea who Jörg Borgwright is, you know, in terms of anything I was consuming outside of something like that. So, yeah. Well, sir, that's been a very interesting look into that. It's not something I would have thought of, but I'm glad we did. So let us move into 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life, brackets, part 2.
Yeah, it is part 2, isn't it?
It is, which is kind of like you're the first person to prove my theory that you can do this more than once. So you know the rules. A bell's going to go off. Let me just check that you can hear it at your end. You can? Cool, that's good. Right then. Despite being top billed, Viggo Mortensen doesn't show up in this film until 41 minutes into it. In Brazil, the Portuguese language title translates to Reflection of Evil. It features the immortal line, "Have you been exploding frogs again?" Something that would go on to be used by the industrial band Coil on their album Stolen and Contamination Songs. Written and directed by Philip Ridley. I'm talking about The Reflecting Skin from 1990. So tell us, James, how does this film impact on you, and what fond memories or not fond memories do you have of it?
I didn't know about the film at all. I wasn't aware of it at all. And I was a student doing my degree, probably around about the middle of my degree.
Yeah.
I came home from the pub one night and very late. I definitely wasn't drunk. I was just very, very, very tired, been out with my friends. And I decided to have something to eat. So I made a sandwich, sat down, switched on the TV, and by some serendipitous moment, the film literally had just started. And I thought, I'm only going to be here for 10 minutes eating this sandwich, so I may as well just watch this. And I don't even think I finished the sandwich. It was just amazing. And I think the reason why I found it so amazing was that it was my first degree is in photography and film.
Okay.
So my mind was very much in a visual space and thinking visually, and those sort of behaviors of seeing the world. And the film is just visually stunning. It's just amazing. But it's also, these visual images are juxtaposed with these really stark moments of brutality and stark moments of quite disturbing imagery. The plot is basically a young boy, Seth Dove, in sort of 1950s rural Idaho, is aware that other children in the area are going missing. And he thinks that they are being taken by vampires. And he slowly works out in his own sort of child mind that one of his neighbours, a lady called Dolphin Blue, who's played brilliantly by Lindsay Duncan.
Indeed. That was a hell of a surprise.
Yeah, she's absolutely top-notch in it. Is probably the reason why there are vampires and why the children are going missing. So we see this world through Seth's eyes, and it's just insane. It's full of adult moments, but polarized by Seth's way of seeing the world. So there's 2 twins that walk down the road, and they're just talking. Yeah. And we hear them talking as adults. But when Seth hears them, they're just like this garbled gobbledygook. And you suddenly realize that we're flitting between an adult world and a child's world, and Seth is on the cusp of becoming a teenager. And it just goes off the rails when his dad is accused of essentially molesting the children and then killing them. And his dad's response to it, this isn't going to give anything away for anybody that wants to watch it. It happens relatively early on in the film. He immolates himself almost by accident in front of Seth. And it's incredibly disturbing for a film to present an imagery of a child watching their father do that.
Yeah.
But it's filmed in such an immensely beautiful way. It's just this darkness that peels apart as Seth pulls his hands away from his eyes. And the screen is just full of beautiful oranges and yellows that are rolling around. And I distinctly remember when I first saw it on TV, is that all of that colour bled into the room. It illuminated the room that I was in, and the room became engulfed in this fire. And you were kind of looking through Seth's hands at this point. So it was both incredibly disturbing and incredibly beautiful. And then, as you say, about 20 minutes later, a very young Viggo Mortensen rocks up, and it goes even more demented from there, really. But it's such a fantastic film, and it ends with the perfect shot, which I don't think it gives anything away by explaining what it is, but essentially Seth runs into a field and screams. Okay. And it's both cathartic, it's absolutely horrifying, and it's also just this beautiful moment again, the way in which it's shot. Because nearly.
Finish your thoughts, sir. Finish your thoughts.
Because Seth manages to bring those two worlds together through finally realizing who's killing the children.
Yeah.
So the mystery's solved, and Seth, in the process, transitions from a child to a young sort of teenager, a young adult. And that scream it just communicates so many different things, and it sort of reaches you. It's like in your core. You can hear it vibrating in your chest. It's horrible, but also strangely beautiful that he's recognized what's going on. And it's just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Now, there wasn't a lot of, because it's a kind of, even though it's a Hollywood release, I suppose, it's not an indies or anything, but it's from a time where, you know, films, there's the big films and then there's films that just came and went, so to speak. And I was reading that director Philip Ridley stated that he hand painted all the wheat yellow because he preferred the look of it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense in terms of...
Completely.
Really?
Absolutely, because Ridley is clearly preoccupied with the narrative, because he's a playwright and a children's book novelist as well, an award-winning one at that.
Yeah.
So there is an immense preoccupation with the narrative of Seth, but because he was trained as a visual artist, there's also an immense preoccupation with the imagery, and it's so precise. That's another way of kind of trying to communicate my enjoyment of it, is that everything is in perfectly straight lines, everything is gridded, and everything's balanced. So even in the simple image of Seth going up to Dolphin's blue house is just this incredibly geometric sort of rendering of Idaho. And there's this big band of yellow corn, the house, this white block in the middle, and this big, big blue vault of sky behind it. And you can just sort of think to yourself, he must have waited days to get that shot, but it's worth it, because Seth's this tiny little character moving through these essentially blocks of colour. And his abstract rendering is as equally abstract as his thinking, as he enters into a house somewhat illegally and sees things that a boy of his age shouldn't. And it's just the synergy between imagery and dialogue and imagery and narrative is it's perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Brilliant. Well, sir, moving swiftly along, for your second choice, there's a couple of firsts here. It's the first short film that's been chosen. It is. I since found out that it's one of Christopher Nolan's 30 favourite films.
Yeah, it is.
It is Terry Gilliam's one of his best 10 animated films ever. The critic Jonathan Romney has twice nominated it in Sight and Sound's his greatest films of all time poll. It was, and this I didn't even know was possible. It was nominated for the Palme d'Or, even though it was a short film at 1986 Cannes Film Festival. I think I saw this at a kind of retrospective. I'm not. There was a lot of animated films shown at one time by some Sundance thing, so I think I saw this, which makes it more embarrassing given the plaudits it's had. But that's my bad memory. I'm talking about Street of Crocodiles, written and directed by the Key brothers, Stephen and Timothy. So tell me, I mean, given all the high-end plaudits, how did it end up finding you, and why did it impact on you?
If I remember correctly, it was part funded by, or perhaps completely funded by, Channel 4 as part of their move to get animation back onto television. And I saw it. I think I saw it as a late-night screening on Channel 4. But they would just say, okay, now here's tonight's animation. Bang, there it was. And I couldn't process it. I just could not process it, because it's it's a film that just defies explanation. Even now, I've made a set of notes and I'm just looking at them thinking, that doesn't explain it. That just doesn't do it any justice. And I think that's because it is just such an incredibly experimental, incredibly textural, very delicate, but also very disturbing film. To try and give it a narrative, essentially, a man spits into a sort of like an organ grinding type machine, which brings to life his character inside what may or may not be the Street of Crocodiles. And he walks through what may or may not be the Street of Crocodiles and encounters some quite sexually perverse tailors that take his head off, make him a suit, give it him back, and kick him out the shop.
Okay.
And then he sort of tries to go back to where he came from, but that doesn't happen because lots of other things happen. And it's just, there's no narrative. And that's part of its beauty, is that it's really the brothers, the twin brothers, thoroughly enjoying the process and just really saying, what would happen if we animated a dead fly? What would happen if we animated blood on a razor? What would happen if we animated a dandelion coming apart? What would happen if this character who has no narrative touches this dirty bit of glass? And it's just amazing. It's like a collection of images which they throw at you and then say, well, go on then, work out the story for yourself, if there is one. And so it's a film that's got loads and loads of secrets and steadfastly refuses to give up those secrets. Many, many, many years later, by chance, I met them at a gallery opening in Leeds when they had done an installation called Eurydice So Beloved, which I ended up writing about, which was a great opportunity. And they were just lovely. They were so nice. They were such lovely people. And I had a great chat with them. And I just, all the time in the back of my head was, these are not the people that made that film. These cannot be the people that made this film. But they were lovely. And like we were saying about Richard Stanley, if you said the right thing, it activated some deeper level of sort of response. And sort of like having that conversation, even though I was surrounded by all these people, really loud and there's quite an atmosphere because it was an opening, it was still such a fantastic opportunity. So I tend to watch it probably once a year because it just reminds me of how tender and how delicate animation can be, but also how disturbing. And that, I think, ties back into my first sort of appearance with you when we talked about Watership Down, that we often think that animation doesn't have the capacity for those things, but it does.
Well, there we go. It ended on a good point there. Your final choice, I watched repeatedly on VHS during my second year at uni. I had Godflesh written on the back of my biker jacket. I had Ministry and Skinny Puppy albums. So this was just a walk in the park. So to see a film that starred not only Iggy Pop and Lemmy, but the lesser known Fields of the Nephilim frontman Carl McCoy, who I didn't realise actually till getting ready for this that Richard had done not just 2 videos, but a bloody album cover as well for the Fields of Nephilim. And then the other musical anomaly that took me a while, I never appreciated at the time, I did later, is that we're watching Gwar, but we're listening to Ministry's Stigmata, which now annoys me. It didn't at the time when I didn't know, because I didn't know. I don't think I knew Gwar. I didn't know what Gwar looked like, even though I'd heard them, which is kind of weird given how fantastic they do look. It comes in like Terminator on a Doctor Who budget. We all walk the wibbly wobbly walk to this fever dream of gore, sex, and sweat. Written and addressed by Richard Stanley. Talking about Hardware, please. I mean, you've talked about it already, but tell us more about why Hardware had such impact on you.
I came to it via Fields of the Nephilim. I was a big Sisters of Mercy fan, and Fields of Nephilim were one of the few bands in my mind that sort of challenged Eldritch's goth throne. And so I got quite invested in it. And that's how I discovered Richard Stanley. And sort of through like you just said, the music promos that he did for them, mainly for Dawn Razor, their first album. And he did, like you said, all the artwork for Dawn Razor as well.
Is that the album? I didn't realise. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Dawn Razor. So their aesthetic was cowboys who had been brought back from the dead. And it was such a bizarre image.
Dusted down in flour.
Yeah, and which they were subsequently arrested for on the false belief that it was large amounts of cocaine, but when it was tested, it just turned out to be sort of home-fried, self-raising flour or something. But that's all part of their mystique. And Stanley helped construct that mystique. And at the time, I was watching a lot of spaghetti westerns with my dad. So it fed into that and The Man with No Name and all of those sort of things. Then I found out through the magazines that you were talking about earlier, things like Starburst, Samain, Fear, that Stanley was making his first feature, Hardware, and it would have McCoy in it, Carl McCoy, the frontman of the Nephilim. So it was just a no-brainer to watch it. And sort of when I watched it, it was keep saying like things are mind-blowing. And what I think I'm trying to explain is that from my point of view, I'd never seen that sort of thing before. And the fact that it was made in Britain and it had this very British feel about it, and it kept undermining you, it was just kind of like, wow, this is brilliant. So one of the things that I've written down is that there's a kind of a very tasteful sex scene in it. And it's this intimate moment between the protagonist Mo and his girlfriend Jill. And some of the things that surround it are fantastic. That he gives her this, Jill's a sculptor, so he gives her all this metal he's found out in the zone, one of which is, of course, the skull that comes to life and starts killing everyone. But he says to her, about halfway through the film, Merry Christmas. And it's like, hold on a minute. This whole film of dire post-apocalyptic nightmare, it's actually Christmas. And it just repolarizes everything. And then this scene of intimacy starts with the droid's eye for the first time coming to life.
Yes.
And it crossfades with the shower head. So you've got this beautiful reference to Psycho, which is then played out at the very end when the droid is lured into the shower by Jill, this place where she's had this intimate moment with her boyfriend, to kill it. But the droid's trying to kill her with lots of knives. So there's this great big sort of dynamic running through it. And you're just kind of thinking, hold on, I didn't see that when I first watched this. So you go back and watch it again, and it's all of these different layers of this film start to come out. And it's not just this silly sci-fi sort of action film. It's got real rigor. It's got real intensity, but only if you want to take it that way. And I think that's one of the real sort of beauty of it, is that when I watch it now, because I've got multiple copies of it, you can either watch it for this crazy I think your description of it's brilliant. It is, Terminator on a Doctor Who budget. And you can watch it and enjoy it on that level.
Finish your thought.
Or you can watch it and just go, there's an awful lot of creativity here, an awful lot of creative thinking. There's an awful lot of consideration about what's going on in this.
Well, I think the impressive thing that I didn't appreciate at the time that I would now, as someone trying to develop movies, is this film feels a lot bigger in terms of its footprint of the world it builds, when really it's a contained thriller, give or take. Yeah. But because of the way it intercuts the God, what's it called? Where they get the zone.
The zone.
Yeah. The zone and, the fleeting moment where we get Lemmy's one line or whatever it is, you get the sense of a bigger world. But in fact, we spend most of the film in an apartment and an apartment across the way, which is essentially a studio. It's not big at all. But the film feels like we're in a horrible dystopian universe. And I think that's a efficient, I guess efficiency, I suppose, is what's going on there, alongside obviously creativity, which is, the mother of invention.
With McCoy is absolutely fundamental to it. It's just a beach shot with a red filter, but it's filmed in such a way that it feels like a vast apocalyptic landscape.
Exactly.
I was watching it again recently, and it just sort of, you're looking at these vast shots and you're thinking this world's massive, but then Stanley very quickly cuts to quite a lot of close-ups. So we know we're not in from a filmmaker's point of view, we know we're not in a big world. But as far as the audience is concerned, those shots are logical because we're moving closer to McCoy. We're seeing him pick up the robot parts. We're seeing the robot hand move on its own independently of him and things like that. And it just builds up the world in a very clever way. This isn't to compare hardware to Jaws, but you kind of get the feeling that Stanley recognizes he's facing a similar problem to Spielberg in that the shark doesn't work. So what do? I have to come up with other visual strategies.
Yeah.
Those visual strategies work. And it's the same with hardware. I haven't got a massive budget and I haven't got a post-apocalyptic landscape set. I've got a beach. So how can I make that look? And there's just genuine directorial skill in how he's framing shots, how he's putting shots together. And like that, like you say, it's all set really in Jill's apartment.
Yeah.
But we are acutely aware of the horror of the world in which she lives. And that's why she keeps herself in her apartment, isn't it? She's terrified of the outside world.
Yeah.
So her only contact with it is a boyfriend, Mo, and his friend, and also the radio, which of course is hosted by Iggy Pop. And it's just bonkers. It's just bonkers, the skill that's on display there. But it's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I like it's obviously not my I'm just hosting the show, but for me, it's definitely a film that's grown up with me. Because when I watched it first time round, it was just a film that had rock stars in it, and it featured music that I was listening to. I wasn't really thinking I'm watching some sort of really effective bit of genre filmmaking, but now I'm older and hopefully a bit wiser. I can see it a lot for a lot more than that. In fact, those parts are less meaningful now as the older I get. Yeah. They kind of mean less.
But the application of that soundtrack's brilliant. Simon Boswell's soundtrack,
of course, brilliant. Yeah. Simon Boswell.
Pill's The Order of Death, which plays over the sex scene, and it's just the use of the sound. So you've got this song about this, but it's about death. But it's also saying this is what you get. So it's also the imagery of the intimacy that Jill and Mo want. So you've got this energy going on, but the song's repetitious, and it intercuts with the repetitious nature of the robot, the droid, realizing what's going on, and its programming to destroy unwanted reproduction is triggered. So the order of death in the song is not the order of death of the song, but the order of death that's inside the robot's brain, in the droid's brain. It's just like, that's really clever. Absolutely. That's really clever. But it's also filmed and edited like a music promo, which makes complete sense because Stanley had only done the Nephilim's promos up until that point. So you get this almost film that stops and is a music promo, then carries on. But the film also carries on through the music promo because it moves the story forward and gives reason for why Jill is left alone with the droid, why the droid comes back to life, why the droid wants to kill Jill. All of those things. It's brilliant, if not near perfect filmmaking, really. And it just saddens me that he hasn't really been able to make more films because he did Dust Devil afterwards. And then there's no point going over it because it's been gone over so many times. His rather ill-fated version of The Island of Dr. Moreau, which is really, really sad that he never got to make his version. And then there's that long period where he never made anything. And then suddenly out of the blue, he comes up with The Colour Out of Space with the fantastic Nicolas Cage. And now he's currently down the road from where I live, filming his new film Steel Donkeys at the Bloodstock Festival. So as we speak, Mr. Stanley is perhaps an hour's journey down the road filming, and it's just great.
Amazing from both of us, an hour down the road from both of us. Well, look, thank you. Thank you for sharing all that. Thank you for sharing three more films that have impacted everything in your adult life, and giving us that insight into the production of text and essays for physical media. I did an episode recently with Mike Hewitt, who is a producer of. He taught me through the production of the Steppenwolf, because obviously that's a brand new film, and then bringing together interviews and stuff like that. So this is nice just to get that kind of. He was talking it from the inside out, and you're giving us the point of view from the outside in. So thank you for that. So it just gives me to say thank you very much for giving us your time on the Britflix podcast.
Thank you. It's been fantastic.
Do remember to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, follow on Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more movies that impacted your life. And if you want to, I'd love to know what your favourite movies are, what your fondest movie memories are. So please share your favourite movies that impacted your life on Twitter. Look for @LeightonRocks, and you can always leave me a review, 5-star preferably, and in your review, tell us which 3 films impacted your life. Best ones get read out on the podcast.
Hey there, Hugh from Podderation here, and if you like today's show, we think you'll love Thanks for Playing. Join Matt and Lucas every week as they explore the wide breadth of the world of video games, talking about their favourites, talking about new releases, talking about old classics, talking about everything that makes video games some of our favourite hobbies out there. If you'd like to learn more, check out our website at podderation.com.